The economy is a significant source of stress. I want to bring in psychotherapist Dr. Robi Ludwig to talk a little bit more about how to handle this stress, because it's coming at a lot of people from all sorts of directions.
Yeah.
Thank you for coming back on the Rush Hour. Why don't you tell us what you have been seeing in terms of these topics around the election among your patients and just in New Yorkers in general?
There is so much stress, and I feel unnerved, but I hear it in my practice that people will argue with each other, even if they're in the same political party, that people have let go of friendships because they are not in political alignment. And there's just a very fractured sense that you can't be yourself. It's not a safe conversation to have.
I imagine that it doesn't make it any easier not knowing what the outcome will be, or where things will land after the vote is all counted.
Absolutely.
What advice are you giving your patients?
So we call this waiting anxiety. And this is when you really don't know what's going to happen, and we can't control knowing what the end result will be. So what happens under those circumstances is we awfulize. We imagine the worst case scenario, and I think we hear it in the news, kind of a doomsday scenario, World War III, or, there's just a lot of awfulizing in the news and scaring people in the news. And so people are really internalizing that. And I think it's really important to know what we have control over and what we don't. And to ask ourselves the question, what if our candidate doesn't win? We have to deal with that.
And let's talk about that a little bit, because, some of the topics that people might fear coming to fruition are, I'm thinking about an undocumented person living here who thinks, now, am I going to be deported? Like there are some real potential outcomes for some people. How do those people navigate, for example, the person who they support not winning this election?
That's a tough one, but I think we take control over what we can. So there's also local government. If you feel really passionate about a topic, and I think we're seeing most Americans do, it might not be about the same topic, then get involved with an organization or some community that furthers your goals for whatever group you feel is disenfranchised, or what statement you want to make. It starts locally first, and we can all be involved in making our voice heard.
How do you suggest people balance not consuming too much news and being on X all the time and Instagram and having the flood come at you, but also staying informed?
It's really important to know your triggers. So if you're looking at the news all the time and it's making you excited and feel good, great, do it. But if it's not, and a lot of times it's not, I think it's worrying people, take a break, take that pause. There are other things to do. The news will be there. You can still be informed, and really to take action. So do something that gives you pleasure, like go for a run or speak to a friend. There are other things we can do with our day other than staying glued to the news, which we know statistically can make us feel worse.
And just to revisit what you were touching on earlier, this idea of post-election, for those whose candidate is not the winner in whether it's the presidential race, a congressional race, or whatever, what are some coping strategies just to not get, depressed about it?
I think people might get depressed, and that's okay. There might be a grieving process, because I think all of our minds are so merged with the news and what the outcome will be. So allow yourself to be sad, allow yourself to grieve, and then put an endpoint on it and say, action is the best way to manage your anxiety and your depression. What can you do as a U.S. citizen to make the differences you want to make, even if it's providing support? And they also have crisis centers where people can call to get the support that they need.
Always with the best advice that you can act on. Dr. Robi Ludwig, thank you so much for coming on.